Hey, welcome to the Devy debate. On today's show, C2C must-haves. Is Mac Jones for real? And should college players opt out of the season before they become draft eligible? But we start with a week 8 in college football. Mr. Bruning, what did you learn this week?
Skip me. Go to Austin. I was not ready for that at all.
Austin, what did you learn this week?
So I think we have this earmarked for, well, first off, I learned never to pick Florida State. Thought maybe they would do something this week and just totally laid an egg. The big thing for me that I learned this week is that nobody's stopping Bama. I know that's not on the show sheet. We didn't really talk about it beforehand, but they're just rolling teams over right now. I thought they would take a step back this year, losing Tua and a couple of their receivers, but they're just chugging along. Honestly, they impress me every week. So I think that's the big thing I learned this week.
Well, I mean, they should. They're a top recruiting school every single year, and they've got some beasts at all the skill positions. They got a beast offensive line. It's one of the reasons Mac Jones is playing so well, because he is so well protected and he has weapons all over the place. I agree with you. I'm going to go off the outside of college football itself and go to college fantasy football, because I think that FanTrack has taught all of us something about customer service. Okay, you can create high expectations and meet those expectations and everything is fine, or you can undersell it and meet those expectations, but by no means can you under promise and then under deliver on your under promise. Okay, and that's exactly what FanTrax has done. They have hold on 1 second.
The joys of live shows.
Yeah, it happens. The amount of times that my kids have interrupted one of my regularly scheduled podcast is it's actually a lot of fun. Just as that today, actually, I know you caught part of the program episode there, Austin. My son, I swear, you guys could probably hear in the background, sounded like he was murdering somebody the way he was screaming and throwing things. So I'll go while Felix isn't here. I think for me, the thing I learned is the Big Ten has really pegged themselves into a corner here with deciding to not play earlier in the season, I think that they thought all the other conferences were going to follow suit and college football was going to be canceled / postponed. The Pac-12 followed them. Nobody else did. Now we have seen Wisconsin's gotten hit with a huge rash of COVID tests, almost an outbreak here. I think the last I saw was 12 to 14 players have tested positive. The biggest one being Graham Mertz, who obviously had that phenomenal game in the opening night of Big Ten play there Friday night. Going to be with the Big Ten protocols out 3 weeks, which is massive for Wisconsin, as they look like the team to kind of play and match what Ohio State can do in the Big Ten championship game, assuming both those teams got there at the end of the year. And now they may not even win the next 3 games because their third string quarterback also tested positive for COVID as well.
Sorry about that. Bernie, you bring up a good point. Graham Mertz is out. And it just shows the effect that COVID-19 is having on this college football season. Wisconsin had to be one of the biggest teams that could have knocked off Ohio State out of the Big Ten, and now they're going to be down. I mean, their season might be decimated entirely. The Big Ten blew it a little bit by pushing their season back as much as they did because they don't have any room for error. And by starting as late as they did, these games are going to get canceled and not rescheduled. And what are you going to do with a team in Wisconsin that played 5 games? I mean, are they going to get a shot at the Big Ten title? Are they going to get a shot at the playoffs? I just don't know. Let me go back to FanTrack. You absolutely. I mean, it's been since September that we've had live scoring, and they've told us every week that we're going to get the scoring up, and they just haven't been able to do it. Now, what they should have done is determined what the solution to the problem was, and then gave themselves some extra time to set customer expectations. But they set customer expectations way too high, and they failed to meet those expectations. And now they're claiming that scoring will be back this week. Nobody believes them. You can't put trust back in the bottle. Once it's lost, it's lost. Now they have a monopoly, at least on the NCAA side, for the fantasy platform this year. No, nobody's coming back to Fantrax next year when there are alternative options. And so it is a lesson in customer service. Give yourself more time. If you need to, undersell it, but then make sure you meet those expectations. You can't make promises that you can't keep. All right, let's go to Campus to Canton must-haves. Bernie, I'm going to start with you. Who are some players that you find on all of your Campus to Canton rosters?
Well, I am ready this time, and I've got a little bit of a list for you guys. Some of the guys that I seem to have, I went through all of my leagues, and I literally own every single one of these in all the leagues that I'm pretty sure. Raymond Davis, the running back out of Temple, he's a guy I've talked about many times on Twitter. If you follow me, he's one of my top 3 running backs in that 2022 class. I just absolutely love his upside and his play in general. G. Scott Jr., obviously I waxed poetic about him on the last episode, so I won't do that again here, but I'm a big fan of his. Zach Wilson, who I actually just watched the great Ray Garvin breakdown on YouTube. I think obviously he's having a phenomenal year. Felix, I know you've been in on him for a while as well. He's a guy that I think has a ton of upside. Mac Jones, who we will talk about here later as well, is a guy that I got. I went back and looked in 3 of mine in round 9 of those C2C drafts, which looks like a complete steal now going into the NFL, especially with most of these leagues being super flex. Rashad Clayton, a running back out of Colorado, freshman this year, I think he's got a lot of upside. Dante Wright out of Colorado State is a kid that I really like, especially now with Warren Jackson being out this year. Austin Jones at Stanford. Stanford has done a really good job of producing running backs here the past couple of years, and he's a guy I think is getting a little bit overlooked. I think he's going to take over. Everybody's all in on E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, but I think Austin Jones has a chance to be the starter and produce right away for them. And then, of course, Breece Hall, who I think is just phenomenal. He is my number 1 running back in the 2022 class. Doesn't have that long speed, but all in all, I love his entire game.
You've got 2 2022 backs in your list there, Ramon Davis and Breece Hall. What does that tell? Does that tell you anything about the quality of the class in 2022?
I think it's going to be better than 2021's. I'm not as big on this 2021 class. I think obviously the top 3, if you want to put Journey Brown up there too, I can see that argument, are kind of elite. And then there's just a huge group, I would say 5 through maybe 15 that you could argue could go anywhere in this class. Some have upside, some don't, where I think that 2022 class for me, off the top of my head, I'd have to go look at my rankings. I would say there's easily 6-7 guys that I could see are really high upside guys that I like a lot more than I would have over guys in this 2021 class.
Of course, Rashad Clayton is sharing the backfield with Jared Mangum, who I believe is shared his backfield with Petty Boone at Detroit King. G. Scott, I want to bring up G. Scott, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Julian Fleming. I thought we would see more of them on Saturday versus Nebraska, but we only saw JXN and Fleming a little bit. I don't think we saw G. Scott at all.
He was on the field. I think it was 3 snaps. I can pull it up really quick. He did not get a catch though, but he was on the field.
Okay. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see, given how stacked their recruiting class is, including the class coming in next year, if we see some people enter the transfer portal, the transfer portal.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go to mine. I got 4. Warren Jackson, Austin Watkins, George Halani, and Grayson McCall. You brought up Dante Wright, Bruning. I'm bringing up Warren Jackson, his teammate. Warren Jackson's not playing this year, not playing his last year at Colorado State. Listen, when it's going to come time for the analytics people to compare Warren Jackson to somebody, you're going to have to compare him to a pterodactyl, because that's what he is. He's 6'6", 220 pounds. Some aren't sure if he can play wide receiver, but he was one of PFF's top rated wide receivers last season. And he has sat behind Michael Gallup and Olabisi Johnson there at Colorado State. And last year he blossomed. He has the catch radius, but at 6'6", 200 and whatever pounds, he can actually move. And so I want to get some all-22 film on him. I want to see if this guy can actually play wide receiver at the next level. And the question is going to be whether or not he can separate. It's not whether he can catch the ball. I think he can be physical enough, but it's going to be whether or not he can separate. He's not going to have the long speed. But can he do some things in the short area? Can he get open against press coverage? Can he get away from physical corners? That's going to be the question. Or is he going to have to make the switch to tight end? So that's a player that I love. I know Skip Newton, a friend of mine, loves him too. And he's somebody I'm paying attention to. One person I do not have any issue with their ability to separate is Austin Watkins. Now, I talk a lot about Austin Watkins. People don't talk about him because he went to JUCO and then he went to UAB, and not a lot of people are watching UAB games. But Austin Watkins is one of the most physical receivers there are out there. He's 6'3", 210 pounds, and he's probably going to run a sub 4.5 at the combine. I think if they have a Senior Bowl this year, he's going to go, and he should be one of the best receivers out there. He can turn into a running back after he has the ball in his hands, and he can take the top off the defense. I don't really care where he gets drafted. I don't care if he gets drafted on day 3 or if he gets drafted or if he goes undrafted. He's going to be somebody that I'm targeting. And I think that he can make an impact at the next level because he has all the tools. Of course, George Holani, I mean, we talked about the 2022 class. He's another back in the 2022 class, like Breece Hall, like Ramon Davis. I don't know that he is an elite athlete, but he's well-rounded. And Boise State has produced some quality running backs in the last few years, and Holani's the next one. He had a good freshman year. He started off this year very good, and just a player that in dynasty leagues, you're probably not going to want to take him with a first-round pick, maybe a second-round pick, maybe he's going to be drafted day 3, but he's a productive player because he can catch the ball and he can run it. Football isn't rocket science. He has the size, he can catch the ball, he can run it. I mean, there's not a lot more that you can ask for in a running back. Some of the running backs are generational talents. They've got all the athleticism. Some of them aren't. George Holani isn't, but he's well-rounded, and I think that he can be a player at the next level. And then my last one, Grayson McCall. Grayson McCall is in the process of changing the culture of the Chanticleers program there at Coastal Carolina. He's a redshirt freshman. I've broken him down on Dynasty Nerds. He's mobile. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He's got a great deep ball, and he's got that team ranked for the first time in its program's history. So he is one that I am watching. Austin, who are some of your campus to Canton must-haves?
So the big guy that I have, I think, in all of my leagues that it seems noteworthy to start off with this week with the news of Kylan Hill is Joquavius Marks. I tagged him as a guy pretty early in last year's cycle once Mike Leach announced that he was going to be coaching there, mostly because, in my opinion, he was probably a top 3 pass catching back in the class. He just has extremely natural hands. He's gifted on the ground as well, pretty shifty, but he's got decent size as well. 4-star guy, so it's not like he was, some guy that I kind of picked out of nowhere. So I figured he would get a lot of run in that offense, kind of like a Max Borghi type role. And so far, he's gotten the touches, hasn't exactly turned into production yet. I think a couple weeks ago he had like 10 catches, 10 receptions, or 10 catches, 10 carries. He only put up like 81 yards or something, but it's at least encouraging to see that they have a role for him and they want to use him. And now with Kylan Hill announcing he's done for the year, I could see him getting the majority of the touches as the season goes on. So I think he's a guy that's huge stock up and a guy that I have everywhere. In terms of wide receivers that I like, I talked a little bit about Chris Oppenbell last week, but I think if anyone follows me on Twitter, they know another guy that I hype up a ton is Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. Even if you take away the Ole Miss uniform on him, he just reminds me so much of A.J. Brown. Very similar size. He can play outside or inside, which A.J. Brown did both in college and is doing both in the NFL as well. He is almost too much of a bully when you put him on like a slot corner to like you just can't cover him with a smaller guy. And on the outside, I mean, he's got the speed as well. So he's a problem for teams. He's not, Elijah Moore gets 50% of the catches in that offense or whatever right now. So I'm not expecting him to really truly have a breakout statistical season until next year, but I think I have him in every single one of my leagues. And it was actually funny. I took him in like the 13th round of the C2C we have over at Dynasty Nerds. And I think someone remarked that in their previous draft that they'd done 45 rounds, he didn't get taken at all, which just like blew my mind because it wouldn't shock me if he's like a day 2 pick next year when he comes out. So he's another one. And then my last guy is Jalen Weidermeyer. The college tight end landscape after this year, it's just this insane class. And then it's like nothing. You have Eric Gilbert, who was that transcendental talent in this class, and Michael Mayer, who looks pretty good as well. But there's really not a lot of other guys in that pipeline right now at the tight end position. I mean, you have like a Baylor Cup who's been hurt, who's also at A&M. You have, I'm trying to think a couple of the other guys I have, but it's just not, I mean, it's hard to find guys that are 6'6", 260 and run like a 4.6, 540 anyway. So it's like not like those guys grow on trees. But Weidermeyer, especially with their wide receiver situation this year, catches a good amount of passes in that offense. And they brought him in to be a blocking tight end, and he's blossomed into more because of the opportunity. So I think he has a really well-rounded game. He reminds me a little bit of Jonnu Smith. So I like him a lot. I've been trying, if I don't have him, I'm trying to buy him before it's too late. But I think those are kind of my big 3 guys that I seem to be ending up with at pretty good value in most of my leagues.
Mingo is interesting because he started off hot against Kentucky, and he's only had 5 catches since, but he's 6'2", 215 pounds. And I wrote an article for Dynasty Nerds just noting C2C waiver wire pickups, and Jonathan Mingo was actually number 1 because of that size speed combination. And I agree with you. I didn't think about it, but yes, he does remind me of A.J. Brown, but he's not getting A.J. Brown's production. Elijah Moore and the tight end are getting all of the targets in that offense. And Mingo's just not being used correctly. I mean, he needs to get the ball. He's a physical player, and Corral could be best served by getting Jonathan Mingo the ball.
I'm not sure if Corral's capable of getting the ball outside often from the games I've watched. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I mean, I think he looks for Yeboah and more because he just really isn't great on those. I mean, either touch throws or just, throwing something on a line to, the sideline from the hash, 20, 25 yards. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like that's something that's in his game.
Yeah, he looks almost completely different than he did from week 1. It's weird to see almost a complete downfall. It's same with Mississippi State and KJ Costello. I think we saw such a great game out of them week 1, and everybody was kind of like, oh, okay, this is why KJ Costello came back. This is why he went. And then it's been almost a complete 180 of his game. He's been worse than Corral for sure, but I need to see more on Corral. He was a guy I was really liking after I saw that week 1 in Lane Kiffin's offense. And yeah, I'm with you. He's kind of really unimpressed me since then.
All right, let's turn to the Devy debates. All right, our first debate topic, and I'm going to throw this topic out to you guys and then see if I can get it quieter over here, all right? Mac Jones is for real. What do you guys say?
You want to go first, Austin? Or you want me to go first? So I got the stats.
You go first. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just throw it out there. I think it's a very interesting conversation to have because, I mean, and now this was pulled last week, but as of last week, I know Zach Wilson is now the number 1 completion percentage in deep yard passes, over 20 yards. But as of last week, it was, my guy, why did I want to call him Bryce Young? Mac Jones. He was also first in adjusted completion percentage, first in yards per attempt, second in adjusted deep passing completion attempts, and 6th in passing yards. I think the argument people are going to make against him is obviously all of the weapons he has around him, including, in some argument stake, the number 1 running back in this class, Jalen Waddle, and the number 1 wide receiver in this class for some people, Devonta Smith, who's top 10, a top 10 offensive line as well. For me, he's been amazing, and I think maybe some people scout the helmet too much when they see that because we've never really seen a productive NFL quarterback that's come out of Alabama. Obviously, we have Tua that's going to get his first start this weekend, but outside of that, you go down the list, and Joe Namath is the only other quarterback in the NFL that's ever produced that's come out of Alabama. I would argue Freddie Kitchens, but no, I'm just kidding. Freddie Kitchens is horrible as a head coach, and I don't even think he made it into the NFL, but for me, it's yes, that's right. Go Browns, 100%. I need a go Buckeyes person to jump in this chat now too. But yeah, for me, I think maybe so many people are scouting the helmet and saying, well, because we've never seen an Alabama quarterback succeed in the NFL, that it's just the weapons around him. For me, it's the throws that he's been making on Saturdays that show me he is elite, and it's not just the weapons around him. He's putting the ball where these wide receivers need it. He's stepping up in the pocket. His pocket presence is great. Throws the ball away when he needs to. Yes, having those weapons, the running back, wide receivers, that offensive line absolutely helps him. Maybe it makes him look a little bit better than we think he's looking. But I think all in all, he's moved up to the number 4, and I could honestly possibly see him moving ahead of Trey Lance by the end of this year.
That's a hot take.
Yeah.
That is a hot take. Mac Jones is the inconvenient truth. I mean, that's what he is, because everyone expected Bryce Young, the freshman, to come in and take over. That's an issue for Mac Jones. That's an issue with his public perception. The other issue is that it's player comps, okay? Player comps make people feel all warm and fuzzy because they say, okay, I've seen this before, and I can tell who this player compares to. I don't know who the player comp is for Mac Jones. I don't know if Mac Jones has elite arm talent. I like his processing ability, but where does Mac Jones fit in the tapestry of quarterback prospects? I just don't know, and it's hard to lose that picture of him being a backup to a Tagovailoa, and he wasn't supposed to necessarily have the seat this year. So it's just hard to think anything differently of him. When I watch him, I see him have clean pockets, and I see him make the right reads. But I don't know. I don't know about Mac Jones. He doesn't necessarily amaze me. He looks like a very good college quarterback, but is he a franchise quarterback? If you're going to get taken before Trey Lance, then that should be a franchise quarterback. That should be a franchise quarterback, and I just don't know. Austin, you got anything on Mac Jones?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I've kind of been thinking a lot about just the quarterback position in general, and where the NFL is kind of going with it. They're kind of catching up to where college has been for years, where you have, generally you don't really see guys coming in anymore that aren't mobile at all and have a lot of success. At least we haven't in the past couple of classes. So that's the one area where Mac Jones concerns me. But the thing that he does really well, and I think is another area that the NFL has really started to go in, is it's kind of like the NBA, where now everything you want is either a layup or a three. We don't take mid-range jump shots anymore. Like, that whole part of the game is like gone.
Yeah.
The NFL, when you're passing the ball, you're either going for these quick little hitters, bubble screens, quick slant, let the receiver get in a little bit of space, do some work, or you're looking deep. And I think those are kind of your money makers in terms of where offenses are heading in the NFL. And to his credit, Mac Jones does both of those things incredibly well. I think his ball placement on short stuff really helps his receiver maximize yardage after catch. And obviously, as you were saying earlier, all of those stats suggest, and the eye test, you can watch and just see he throws a beautiful deep ball.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think he can succeed, but the lack of mobility does scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that argument because, I used that in a talk about Baker Mayfield the other day. I was talking about how they were comparing him to, goodness, who was it? They're talking about him and Justin Herbert in a Discord channel that I was in. And I said they're completely two different quarterbacks, not just based on size, but Justin Herbert can actually make plays with his legs. And he has an absolute cannon, I would argue, has a stronger arm than Baker. Now, Baker does have a good arm, but it's not Justin Herbert's arm. And Baker is what I would consider your traditional pocket passer. Like, yes, can he get out of the pocket, use his mobility to make plays? Yes, but he's not burning. I could probably catch Baker. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I could probably catch Baker coming off the line. Like, he's not going to beat anybody in a foot race like Justin Herbert can. So I do agree with you on that part with Mac Jones. Like, he's going to come in and be that traditional pocket passer, but we've also seen guys, I feel like those guys last longer. Look at Breeze, Brady now, Aaron Rodgers. He's a little bit more mobile. I would say he's more mobile than Mac Jones, but for the most part, he plays his game in the pocket. So I don't want to say that those guys are getting forced out of the NFL. Not that that's what you were saying, but I feel like there is a place for them, but they have to go to the right team. They have to go to a team that's willing to build that kind of offense around him. Kind of like what Baltimore did with Lamar and his ability to create with his legs. They built that offense around what he does.
Here's the problem I have with Mac Jones. Everyone's kind of like, oh, I'm not going to get on the Zach Wilson bandwagon because this is the first year doing it. How many games has Mac Jones had? Okay, and he's playing on the best team in college football against SEC defenses that aren't what they used to be. In the game against Georgia, he was not facing pressure. Bruning, you mentioned about Lamar Jackson, the Ravens building the team around them. Do you see a perfect fit for Mac Jones? Is he someone that you can see starting in year one?
Not year one. Well, I take that back. Yes, I think that he does fall toward the end of the first round. I think if he goes to the New Orleans Saints, that'd be a perfect fit for him. I don't think Brees comes back this year. I know he signed the 2-year deal, but I think Super Bowl or bust if he doesn't make it. Brees has not looked the same this year to me as he does last year, and really the past 2 years. And I think him missing the 6-7 games that he missed last year, same the year before, that has kind of helped his arm out a little bit and not be so, I don't want to say tired, but he's had more juice in his arm. If Brees leaves and say they make it to the playoff team, I don't see Mac Jones going as a top 10 pick. So if he falls down into that range and my God, what I want to call them, the Patriots, the Saints take him, I think that would be a perfect fit for him in that offense, because I do believe in Sean Payton's offensive mind as well to help build that offense around him. He gets a great, as they've been calling him, slant boy in Michael Thomas if they don't trade him, right there that he can hit the ball. He can hit him with the ball if Emmanuel Sanders is there next year. We'll see what happens with Jared Cook, but I love they drafted a tight end this last year that I think is going to be really good. And why can't I remember? Out of Dayton.
Troutman.
Why can I not? Troutman, I think, could fit really well with him as well. Like, I think if they Alvin Kamara have the backfield, could be a really great spot for Mac Jones. But that's assuming he falls that far, where I do think there's a lot of people talking about him jumping Trey Lance. I don't know. He hasn't yet for me. But if he continues to play this way, it's going to be hard for him not to, because like I've talked about on the podcast show, I know you listened to it. I don't know if you listened to the full episode, Felix, but we talked about then Lance is going to become that forgotten piece, because we're not going to see him all year. And unless he goes out there and completely wows us at the combine and these workouts, he's going to fall behind some of these guys, whether he deserves to or not.
I mean, one thing is for sure, everyone is going to want their favorite quarterback prospect to go to Sean Payton and the Saints.
That is true.
And since we are talking about Trey Lance, let's go to this topic. Another quarterback to jump Trey Lance. Will Zach Wilson be drafted before Trey Lance? I mean, I can take it myself. I don't think that he will. I don't think that he will because really because of Justin Herbert and the season that he's having. When you have the size, the arm strength, and the rushing ability that a Trey Lance has, I think that prospect is going to be taken in the top 5, and probably someone is going to be trading up for him. Justin Herbert is having a fabulous season, and many thought that he was more toolsy than quarterback. And that's and I see Trey Lance as kind of a raw prospect. He has the rushing ability. He has a cannon for an arm, and he's 220 pounds, and he can run like Josh Allen. And so it is as amazing as a season as Zach Wilson is having, and I'm staying up, these games starting at 10:15 Eastern Standard Time, the appropriate U.S. time zone. But I just don't see him jumping Trey Lance at this point. But at some point you're going to have to say, okay, he's done too much. He's made too many of these big time throws, and some team is going to fall in love with him because they've seen him more recently. He continues to play out of his mind. I think last week I had the bold prediction that he would go for 505. Well, he threw for 254 in the first half, and then played part of the third quarter, and then didn't really play the fourth quarter. He had the green jersey on and was giving the quarterback signals. If he keeps playing at that rate, if he keeps making the big throws, if he keeps rolling right and then throwing bombs to the opposite hash outside the numbers, and I think that we might have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10 with Lance, obviously Trevor Lawrence if he comes back, and Justin Fields, and Kyle Trask, and Zach Wilson. I don't know about Mac Jones just yet. Anyone else got some thoughts on whether Zach Wilson goes ahead of Trey Lance? All right,
I think there's zero chance that he does. I think that Lance is easily going to be the third pick, and I don't scout offensive line. I don't know anything really about it. But it seems like this year's class, where the strengths of it lie, is setting up perfectly where we're just going to have a bunch of quarterbacks go early.
Right.
Other than Sewell, I haven't really heard there's some crazy offensive tackle talent. There's not like an Okuda corner type prospect, at least not that I've seen or heard so far. So and there's not really a big edge guy. I mean, Rousseau is thought to be the big guy, but he's not. No one thinks of him like they have the top guys the past couple years. So I think it's setting up perfectly for like four quarterbacks in the top like 8 picks. I think teams will trade up. I think there'll be a bunch of movement, and I can't see anybody hopping Lance. I didn't watch this year's game of him yet. I didn't think there was really any need to because he wasn't going to show anything in one game that I hadn't already seen. I'll watch it at some other time. From what I heard, he, flashed, but wasn't, spectacular, which pretty much sums him up. But so I think but I can't see Zach Wilson hopping him or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, I'll give real quick on mine. Just I know because I think he's going to go back to school, and I think he needs to go back to school. I think his footwork still needs some improvement, and I think just someone you mentioned a minute ago, Justin Herbert, I think he would benefit a ton, just like Herbert did by going back for that one more year, getting to play tougher competition, showing that he can do it. I honestly think if he does go back to school, he could jump and be the QB1 in next year's class, ahead of Rattler, ahead of Howell, ahead of Slovis, if he continues to do what he's doing this year, next year.
So he did declare. I'm just not sure what his agent status is.
Who?
But I'm pretty sure he declared on the 6th of this past month, I'm pretty sure.
Zach Wilson?
Oh, I thought we were talking about Trey Lance on that one. My bad.
No, Zach Wilson. I'm saying I don't see Zach Wilson dropping Lance. Yeah, I don't see Wilson dropping Lance because I think he's going to come back to school.
My bad.
Let's talk about one more quarterback. 6'5", 243-pound junior Joe Milton. He goes 15 for 22 for 225 yards and 1 TD. Does Jim Harbaugh have his quarterback in Joe Milton?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
Bruning, as an Ohio State fan, are you scared of
I said it on Twitter. Yes. My biggest thing, because obviously being as big Ohio State fan as I am, that is the game we look for every single year. We know when it's going to be. It's always that week of Thanksgiving. I'm excited for it, ready for it every single year. Obviously, it's going to change up this year because of COVID. But for me, the biggest thing that has held back Michigan the past, I would say almost 8-9 years since even before Harbaugh got there, for the Urban Meyer, Ryan Day era, the biggest thing has held them back is quarterback play. If you go back and look, they've been in a lot of those games, and it's been the Shea Pattersons. Can't even think off the top of my head before Shea Patterson right now, but those guys have been the reason, in my opinion, they've ended up losing those games. Joe Milton reminds me a lot of what Cardale Jones did for the Buckeyes in the championship run. I think they are very close in size, very close in arm strength. Now, Milton's more mobile than Cardale Jones is, and that scares me even more with what we saw of that Buckeyes defense. I think Milton and Harbaugh are a terrifying combo right now.
Cardale Jones and, quite frankly, the Ohio State offense has always been a vertical offense. And as well as Joe Milton played, that was a conservative game plan. There were a lot of bubble screens, a lot of jailbreak screens, a lot of rollouts and short passes. In addition to that, they had a defensive touchdown. Minnesota had a failed fake punt. They gave up a long kick. Minnesota gave up a long kick return. Minnesota failed to score a touchdown when they had 1st and goal on the 3. That was really a defensive and special teams game, and Joe Milton didn't have to do much. Now, Graham Mertz had the same kind of game plan. He was hitting everybody short and then had a couple of long shots. It was a very efficient game. If you're going to beat Ohio State, and that's really, especially with Wisconsin out, and Penn State is not the team that it has been in past years. If Michigan is going to beat Ohio State, it has to have a vertical passing game, because Justin Fields is going to put up 40 points, maybe 35 points in that game. And I don't know that we know if Joe Milton can do that. I don't know if he can do that against a top tier defense. He didn't, at least personally for me, he showed, I saw more from the game plan, and that he executed the game plan, but that was a lot of short stuff. I only saw 1 or 2 passes that were more than 10 yards down the field. Again, everything was at or behind the line of scrimmage, and you're not going to beat an Ohio State or a team in a bowl game with a game plan like that. You got to be able to throw the ball vertically, and Joe Milton just did not show that against Minnesota, but he didn't have to. He did what he had to do. He didn't turn the ball over, and so we'll see. I think the jury's still out on Joe Milton. It's going to be until they play Ohio State. Until Jim Harbaugh beats Ohio State, the jury's going to be out on his quarterback. Austin, you got anything on Joe Milton?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much summed it up. He looked competent was the word that I had written down after the showing, which, to be fair, is an upgrade, like you said, over Shea Patterson, who couldn't even hit those short passes last year consistently.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really do him any favors with some of the pressure he got at times, but I thought at least Milton looked better than that. So if that's the starting off point, then I mean, we'll see in the next couple of weeks. They have Wisconsin, I think, in 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. We'll see. I mean, Mertz isn't going to be there for that, but we'll see, who else is missing or whatever. But that should be really their first real test. We'll see if that shakes out or not.
Austin, we had a big injury in Alabama. I know we talked about Mac Jones a little bit. Jalen Waddle injured this week. Does his injury change his draft stock at all to you?
So for me, it doesn't change it at all. I think a lot of the questions people had this year, he'd really just been their return guy and like the fourth option amongst their receivers the past couple years. So I think people really wanted to see, can he be like an actual receiver and not just kind of a gadget guy? And I think he answered that tenfold over the first couple weeks. I mean, not only was he still returning kicks at a high level, which ultimately got him injured, but he was also, I mean, they had him working inside, outside, doing a ton of different stuff, contested catches, bubble screens, ton of stuff. They had him doing a little bit of everything. And he showed, in my opinion, that he has one of the better sets of hands in this class, that he isn't you think a speed guy, that he's really not going to be, super physical, but he's not afraid of contact. So for me, it doesn't hurt his stock at all. And I'm not a doctor. I have, I'm like basically the opposite of a doctor. So I'm not the person to ask about this at all, but it's my understanding that a clean break, like that is a lot better than him like blowing out his knee or, like Tua's hip injury or something like that. So it's, it seems like a pretty set timeline, 4 to 6 months. He'll get into the tail end of, off season, combine prep or pro day or whatever that is. So for me, I think the hype train just chugs on.
I agree with you. I don't think that his draft stock has changed at all. I mean, we just seen it recently with Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown entered the NFL draft with an injury. He didn't even test at the combine. He didn't have a pro day. He was drafted, number 15 overall. And it just so happens that Waddle is, on that spectrum, including Marquise Brown, a small speed guy, but Waddle is way more physical and has more of a my ball mentality. He just doesn't offer speed. If anything, Waddle's injury to me signifies that, listen, once your draft capital is established, stop playing football games for free. I'm sorry. I just have, and I know that that's a controversial position, but I want these players, these college athletes who have pro potential, I want them to secure the bag. So once they have done enough to show what their draft capital, what they can do in the NFL, it's time to opt out. And quite frankly, I think that is going to be the case more and more as we go further in college football. I mean, it started with Christian McCaffrey and opting out of a bowl game. And then just so happens on the same day, Jake Butt later that night was playing in the bowl game. He was a first-round tight end. His career has never been the same. And that cost him millions of dollars. I want these students to secure the bag. And luckily for Jalen Waddle, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. I think that he's still going to be one of the top receivers drafted. But it could have been a catastrophic injury. It could have been a Marquise Lattimore injury. It could have been a Nick Chubb injury in the season before, before he's getting drafted. And that it would have cost him a lot of money. So for that reason, I have no problem with someone like Kylan Hill saying, I'm opting out. I'm done. I'm going to go prepare for the draft. Or Warren Jackson saying, I'm not playing this year. I'm going to go prepare for the draft. Or quite frankly, Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, to me, should not be playing football. Trevor Lawrence should not be playing football. They should be preparing for the draft.
I'm actually a bit surprised Saban hasn't gotten a bit more criticism for having Waddle still back on kickoffs. Obviously he's a spectacular return guy, but you can't tell me that none of the other 5-star, 4-star receivers that they have on that roster can return kicks at a decent level. So I'm actually a little bit surprised. I mean, I don't personally have that criticism, but I'm surprised we haven't heard it from people. Just,
Well, I'm wondering if that's
that.
something where Waddle wanted to do it. I mean, that's the one thing that we can't take away, like I 100% agree everything you guys said, and I'm with you. I don't think his stock changes at all, but it's something that, I agree that they should be able to secure the bag, and it sucks that they have to do this stuff for free, but you can't take some of the heart and competitiveness that those guys have, like the Lawrence and Fields, who have talked about the reason they came back is because they want that national championship. And that drive is what makes them as great as they are. And I'd imagine with Waddle, with the way he's improved every year and wanting to do the same thing, probably has that same drive. So I'm not saying that this is what you're saying, but I feel like it may not be easy for Nick Saban to walk in and be like, hey, you're not going to return kicks anymore. Waddle may be like, no, I'm the best damn kick returner you have. I am returning kicks. And Nick Saban wants to win too. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but it's not his job to prepare them for the next level or make sure that they don't get hurt. It's his job to win football games and at the college level. That's why I've always hated when people get on, like, I didn't think Urban Meyer was a great coach in general, preparing players for the next level, but that wasn't his job. His job was to win college football games. And so I don't think Saban should get much criticism for that, because I would almost bet if you asked Waddle in an honest moment, even after the injury, he would tell you, I still wanted to return kicks. And I mean, he's good at it. He's one of the best I've seen returning kicks, so he deserved to be back there.
There was a point at which it was normal for these players to play in their bowl games, and then one player opened the door, and then you see that became the norm. And because of COVID-19, people opting out, you see other players opting out. And I think that we're only going to see it increase. We're only going to see players decide, okay, I've established my draft capital, and I'm not going to play football this year. George Pickens may be the next one if he can finish his season. He had a tremendous freshman year. If he can, finish this season strong and maybe a portion of next season, you might see them just say, all right, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to preserve my draft capital. All right. You guys ready to close out the show with some bold predictions?
Yeah, you want me to give my trivia question first, so then you guys can think about it while you give your bold predictions? I'm going to keep it, is what I put on Twitter, because I couldn't get the other one up in time. So there's a college running back right now that I don't think is getting talked about enough by a lot of people. He will be in my Stock Watch article that's coming out on Friday. Right now, he is first in the NCAA in avoided tackles with 41, first in explosive plays, which is anything over 15 yards, with 25. First in first downs in NCAA right now with 41, and he's only 93rd in snaps. I'm sorry, he's only got 93 snaps, which is 36 in the NCAA, because he is literally in a 50-50 timeshare. He is splitting. He's got one game where he's out-carried the other player that is splitting time with him, and he out-carried him by 7 carries. Outside of that, he's been behind him 1 every single game. You want to do, we can give our bold predictions, and then you guys can guess who it is.
Okay.
Or you can guess now, whichever you guys want. I feel like one of you is probably going to get it. You guys are both smart, but I thought it might be a cool little thing to try out here.
Well, I saw Austin's guess on Twitter, and I actually agree with him. So, Austin, I don't want to steal your shine. Who do you think it is?
I've been sitting here thinking which of the two I think it actually is, because I'm pretty sure it's one of Michael Carter or Javonte Williams. Am I on the right team at least?
You are on the right track. Yes.
Yeah.
Carter's my favorite of the two, but I've heard people really rave about Williams as well. So I'm going to guess it's Williams.
And I think it's Williams also, because I'm pretty sure that Williams has only out-carried Carter once in the first couple of games. So I'm going to say it's Williams also.
That is correct. It is Javonte Williams. He is leading everybody right now. And you were right. It was just the one game. The one game against Virginia Tech, he had 7 more carries. Outside of that, Carter has out-carried him in every single game. Now, the last couple has only been by 1 carry each, but he's only 10 yards ahead of Javonte Williams too. So that's it. He has 590. Javonte Williams has 580, but the other stats are just ridiculous in favor of Javonte Williams. And I don't think he's getting enough talk right now. I mean, he's a guy who, again, is in this 2021 class that I feel like could easily jump up into that high end of the tier 2 running backs, because we just don't see a lot of guys that I think are producing at his level. So
not only is Javonte Williams producing, but he's 5'11", 225 pounds, and he can catch the ball. So he is a potential bell cow back at the next level. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into the bold predictions. Let me start it off. All right. So we know, and I'm going to jump to the NFL on this one. We know that Tampa Bay signed Antonio Brown. And listen, before Antonio Brown went all Antonio Brown on us, he was on a Jerry Rice career trajectory. He's a technician. He's not dependent on speed. The last time he played, he had 8 targets for 4 receptions and 1 touchdown. And who was throwing him the ball? Well, one Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. And who's going to be throwing him the ball once he becomes eligible to play? One Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. My not only that, but he's eligible after week 8. He's eligible in week 9. My bold prediction is that Antonio Brown is a wide receiver 1 in his first action against New Orleans. And now you don't have to squint too hard to see this happening. You're going to have Marshawn Lattimore shutting down Mike Evans. And we know that when you play a dominant corner, funnel targets to the other receivers. Well, that other receiver is going to be most likely Antonio Brown if Chris Godwin can come back from his finger injury. Even if he can't. In his first action with the Patriots, Tom Brady targeted him 8 times. I think he had 3 red zone targets. So I can see Antonio Brown getting between 7 and 10 targets, going over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a wide receiver 1. I'm going to take it a step further, okay? I've got Antonio Brown being a wide receiver 1 in 2021. He keeps it going with the Buccaneers, okay? Jerry Rice played until he was 41 years old, I believe. Antonio Brown, again, is on that trajectory. Antonio Brown was never a spark athlete. He was a technician. He still is a technician. He has a stop and go that's better than anyone's, and I don't think that he's lost that. So I've got Antonio Brown being a wide receiver 1 in week 9 against the Saints, and next year in 2021, Antonio Brown, wide receiver 1. That is my bold prediction. Bernie, you want to go, or anybody got any comments on that?
I do. I agree with you that he's going to go off against the Saints. I do not think he's going to finish as a wide receiver 1 the rest of the season. I guess
get arrested. I mean, you never know. I mean, he could get arrested before that game.
That's true. Well, you could count me in the book that is skeptical, I guess, he's a Hall of Fame talent. There's no question about that whatsoever. But him going to that Bucs team with all the other talent they have around him, I'm not sold that he will be a wide receiver 1 the rest of the season. In fact, I would advise people after he puts up monster numbers against the Saints, because I agree with you, that is coming in week 9, sell him as fast as you can in fantasy.
Austin, your bold prediction for this week. What do you got?
Perfect. So I am going to take a page out of your book last week and talk a little bit about Indiana. But I'm going to go the opposite way. Rutgers looked, from the stuff that I saw, I know this sounds so crazy, and I got burned with Florida State last week, so I'm probably just going to sound like an idiot when we talk again on Wednesday. But Rutgers looked decent last week. Yeah. I mean, they played – I mean, Rutgers of old would have rolled over and lost by 45. They won, and they won by double digits, or at least close to it. I think Indiana's going to be riding high. I think, Indiana didn't really do anything spectacular last week against Penn State. They limited the time that Penn State had the ball, and they played solid run defense. But, offensively, they were all over the place. No one outside of WAP really scares me on that offense at all. So I'm going to pick Rutgers to win that game.
I like it.
That's heartbreaking for me. I like the Hoosiers as an underdog. I'm not a Hoosiers fan, but I love Michael Penix. I wish that he would get his fundamentals together. But I love Michael Penix. And is that game in New Jersey, or is it at Indiana? Do you know? I don't know that it matters because there are no fans, so it's not like a home field advantage.
It's at Rutgers.
Okay. All right.
Isaiah Pacheco going off in that one. Looked good. He looked good against Michigan State.
The bowling ball.
Mine is not quite as bold as your guys, though I do think I think it's somewhat bold, because we've seen Texas, they don't seem to play up to their competition. They seem to play down to it, but they always have that one game where they just upset a team they're not supposed to. Oklahoma State, in my opinion, has looked like the best team in the Big 12 so far this year. They've actually been playing defense, which is something I've heard is unheard of in that conference. I don't think any other coach really knows what that is. They've been doing a really good job there. Obviously, Tyler Wallace has looked amazing. They got Spencer Sanders back as well. Chuba Hubbard, finally, the past 2 weeks has looked like the Chuba Hubbard of old. Them playing defense, I think they beat up on Texas this week and remain undefeated for their shot at a possible playoff berth at the end of this year.
Big 12, big scoring. So that's Sam Ehlinger versus Spencer Sanders.
Yeah.
If I'm in college DFS, I want to get a piece of that game.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that'll do it for us. I'm Felix Sharp. You can find me at Sharp Review. You can find Austin at Devy Deets, and you can find Matt at Sports Fanatic MB. We all write for Dynasty Nerds. You can find our latest articles there. Hey, congratulations to Matt. Just got inducted into the Fantasy Sports Writers Association.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Congratulations to you, sir. One final note, just an apologies to Kirk Herbstreit. We ran out of time. We'll try to get him rescheduled soon.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone.